Bit of a clickbaity title, but I am a true advocate for a deal. Which is why today I'm going to be reviewing this Seat Leon FR technology. This car is closer to a VW Golf than you might think, and actually in some ways better. Don't believe me? Well, today I'm going to show you. My name's Tom and you are watching Paragon Cars. Let's go. Engine up first then, and this is the 1.4 litre TSI with 150 horsepower and 250 newton meters of torque. All that power goes to the front wheels only via a 7-speed dual clutch gearbox. Now, 150 horsepower might not seem like much, but this car is also very light. It's under 1,300 kilos, so it should do a pretty good time on the 30 to 70 sprint. But proof is in the pudding. Let's do it. So then, how did we do? Well, we did a time of 7.32 seconds, which is pretty good for 150 horsepower. That's almost as fast as a Audi A6 Avant, which I think, considering it's only got a 1.4 litre engine, is pretty impressive. Coming to the inside then, you do notice the quality isn't quite as good as a VW Golf. Like, there's no soft touch materials on the door cards. Even so, they still feel pretty nice, and there's no grippy bits in the cup holder. Despite that though, everything else still feels pretty nice. We have dual zone climate control, a surprisingly fast sat-nav with Apple CarPlay. I think this system is actually better than the one in the Golf, and a similar armrest with multiple adjustable heights. Being the FR, we even have different drive modes, including a sports mode. Coming to the back with the driver's seat in my driving position as a 5'11" guy, as you can see, I have a little bit of knee room, which is very nice for this class of car, and even with my hair gelled up, I'm still not touching the ceiling. You even get your own little climate vent. Then the boot is also pretty good. Obviously it's the same size as the Golf, being on the same platform. You even get some shopping hooks, some nettage down here, and of course you can fold the seats down. Although, having said that, you have to go all the way around to fold them down, which is a bit of a nightmare. But you do get a little seatbelt holder, so the seatbelts don't snag on the way down, which is very nice. And then, as you can see, once you've got the seats folded down, there is a little bit of a load lip, which you don't get in the Golf because you get an adaptive boot floor. But it makes the most of the space it has. All in all then, not quite as nice as a Golf inside, but now we come to the driving, and I think you might be surprised. So let's get into it. First things first then, round town, this feels identical to a Golf. One thing I love about this car as well, the steering wheel's nice and thin, it's the right shape, the steering's nice and light as well. The car just feels like it's on its toes all the time. And the Golf doesn't really have that. I don't know why. It's like the Golf is slightly more mature, this is a little bit more silly. But it just feels a bit more playful already. I just feel like I can kind of zip out of junctions quicker, and I just feel a little bit more connected to the road. And it's strange because you'd think there would be no differences from the Golf really, but there's definitely something in the drivetrain or what they've done with this car that just makes it feel a bit nippier, which for driving around town is actually what you want. But seats are comfortable, suspension is good over bumps. There is very, very little to complain about. Even the start-stop in this car is not bad, and in VAG cars it's usually pretty awful, especially in their diesel cars, but thankfully this petrol car starts nice and quickly. And in terms of parking this thing, obviously it's a small hatchback, so driving it around London is very easy really. Got a nice fast steering rack as well as a lot of steering angle, so even when you come to a smaller space like this, whack it in reverse, we got reverse parking sensors, and that really is all you need. Getting into a space in one go is pretty easy if you're good at parking, unlike me. But the wing mirrors are nice and wide, view out the back is good, very little to complain about. Parking sensors, pretty accurate. I do notice in the rain sometimes they get a bit fooled, but they do in the Golf as well, to be fair. Then getting out of the car, always get to the first notch. Yeah, perfect size really for a city. And even though this is quite a small engine, it feels so punchy as well. Right, coming out of junctions, half throttle, engine starts, bit of a scrabble from the front wheels. We are on all-season tyres though. But you barely have to go above 2,500 revs to get up to speed. There's so much low-down grunt in this engine. Then in terms of MPG, this has cylinder deactivation, so it can run on just 2 cylinders, which means, in theory, this thing should do 58 miles per gallon on the combined cycle. We are actually going to test that figure today. But yeah, so if you do 58 mpg in a 50 litre fuel tank, that'll get you, I think it's 640 odd miles, but then obviously 3/4 of a tank is 510 miles. Then in terms of costs, a full tank at £1.45 a litre, again this is a 50 litre tank, is going to be £72.50, and for 3/4 of a tank it's going to be 58 quid. So if you do 58 miles per gallon, you're doing over 500 miles for less than £60, which I think is a pretty good deal. But will it actually do that figure? Let's reset our trip computer now, and we're going to have a little handling test first and then get on the motorway to create that combined figure. Okay then, let's use our modes button to get us into sports. This just sharpens up the steering and the throttle response, as well as putting the gearbox into sports mode as well, so it holds on to gears for longer and makes those shifts a bit quicker. I have turned the traction control off in the infotainment. Let's go for a manual gearbox as well. Get in front of this van. And wow, yeah, the power feels good. Even though we're on all season tyres, handles pretty well. And do you know what? He's blooming quick as well. Oh dear, now we've got a bit of traffic, so I suppose we better go into eco mode and get our adaptive cruise control on. It's a good system in this. It's got lane assist as well, so basically just drives the car for you in traffic. But anyway, let's cut to the motorway and we can see what this thing is like on the motorway, whether it's quiet, whether it's noisy, and how it rides. Okay, so eco mode, let's see what the response is like coming onto the motorway. This is worst case scenario, but I need to put my foot down. So let's go now. Gearbox is responding quickly, and look at that performance, 150 horsepower, and we're up to 70 already. Do you really need more than that in a daily driver? Not really. You can feel the lane assist kicking in now. Then, of course, once you're on the motorway, cruise control, or adaptive cruise control on this, on 70 miles an hour, and you just let the car do its thing, really. Very comfortable. My only little gripe with this thing is the seat doesn't quite go low enough, but I mean the rest of the interior is great. My elbows can still reach the armrest nicely, and visibility is good, and it's fairly quiet in here, you know. And if you don't believe me, we are actually going to test this in a bit and compare it to an Audi S3, so see how quiet it is compared to that car. But anyway, I think it's time to test the MPG. Right, motorway journey over, and we have done 41 miles per gallon, which is not 58 mpg by any means, but it's still a darn good figure, and in fact better than pretty much any other car we've tested on this route. Then in terms of decibel level, we did 74.5 decibels. For comparison, the Audi S3 did 73.5, so 1 decibel louder than a much more expensive car. And I think the reason for that is because this is running on slightly smaller wheels, 18 instead of 19 inches. So it's a pretty quiet car, and with the adaptive cruise control, very relaxing to drive. Anyway, now it's time to see why this is more fun than the Golf. Traction control off, sports mode engaged, gearbox in manual. Let's do it. Brakes up first then, and they work, they just don't have a very nice feel to them a little bit spongy. But that's purely because they're the non-sporty brakes in the VAG lineup of hot hatches. But they're still very effective. Any sound? There is noise, but it's not a nice one. Certainly doesn't stop people from putting exhausts on these cars though, does it? Ooh, bit of lift off oversteer. See, that you don't really get in your bog standard Golf now, do you? Now, it's very slight, but it makes all the difference. It just means when you're coming around corners like this, you don't understeer when you're on the throttle. And the thing is, this car has enough punch to actually be quite fun as well. But it's just the steering feels nice. Maybe it's just the shape of the wheel or something, but it definitely feels better than the Golf. It just feels dartier. It's like 10% more playful. That's all it is, but that's all it needed. You can just feel the back end moving around more. And I reckon that means it's going to be an absolute hoot on a smaller B road. So let's go to one now and see what this thing does. Okay, this is where hot hatches do well. So how does this warm hatch do? Bit of wheel spin. Dual clutch gearbox really does help out the kind of sporty feel of this thing. But I mean, the steering is where it really shines. Suspension is perfectly stiff for UK roads as well. And it just feels so pin sharp. It's lovely. It feels like a Cupra, but a bit slow. That's all it feels like. But the engine's still zippy, the gearbox is nice, and the dash as well. This kind of like almost pointy needles just look lovely on the tachometer. Everything feels sharp and crisp. Okay, can we hit 60 before the corner? Let's go. Oh, it downshifted back into first. That's 50. 60. Oh, hard on the brakes. Yeah, man. For 150 horsepower, this thing is perfectly quick enough, is it not? Tiny bit of oversteer there from the back end. The suspension's really good for UK roads, actually. It's stiff enough that it kind of keeps the body flat, but there's enough softness in the suspension that it kind of just keeps in contact with the road a bit more. I find a lot of German hot hatches kind of skip down these roads a little bit. I mean, look at the power though. The lowdown grunt from this engine. You can basically Scandi flick it around every single corner. Second and third are where it's at. It's interesting, there's obviously no front diff like limited slip diff, but it holds the road well. I think that's just due to good damping, and you can really put the power down coming out of corners. It's just 10% more fun than a Golf, and that's all it needs. Really, that is all it needs. And to me at least, everything else is close enough to a Golf that I'd pick this. It's less money, more fun, and whilst the quality is probably 5% off the Golf, I think it's close enough that I'd rather have one of these, especially if you live near some back roads. Anyway, as always, I hope you enjoyed content like this. If you did, give us a like, and why not subscribe, as not only can you see more content like this, you can see everything we have for sale, which includes this lovely little Seat. I'm going to be quite sad having to get out of this thing. Kind of reminded me of my Cupra that I had a couple of years ago. Very good fun. Anyway, my name has been Tom, and you have been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.